The Error Analytics dashboard in New Relic APM is designed to help you quickly troubleshoot unhandled exceptions in your application. This tutorial will cover how to use the Error Analytics dashboard to troubleshoot runtime errors in your application, how to analyze errors using default attributes that we capture automatically, as well as custom attributes that you can send from your code, and how to view error data in New Relic Insights so that you can perform further analysis. So in this video, we'll take a quick tour of New Relic's Error Analytics dashboard. Starting from the overview dashboard, you can see that we have this error rate chart, which shows the percentage of transactions over time that have returned unhandled exceptions. So we're looking at about 1 hour of data here, and during that hour I've had about 1/100% of my transactions return errors. If I would like to analyze those errors, I can click the error rate heading above this chart. That will take me to the same place as if I click the Error Analytics menu under Events on the left-hand side. Now, before we go there, you may notice that there's a second menu called Errors here. Why do we have two? Well, the Errors dashboard is our legacy errors page, and it doesn't provide analytic capability. It just shows you a list of exception names and the transactions in which they occurred. It allows you to do a little bit of searching through those errors and view stack traces, but much more limited in terms of analytic capability. So this tutorial will focus on the Error Analytics dashboard. Let's click over there. Our default view groups the errors by exception class name. So we can see this upper chart is the same one that we had on our overview dashboard. We can see that during this hour of time, I've had 25 java.lang.runtime exceptions and 1 java.lang.illegal argument exception. And notice the colors, blue and yellow, those correspond to the items on this chart. So most of my errors during this hour have been java.lang.runtime exception, but I had my 1 illegal argument exception here at about 8:51 or 8:52 a.m. And finally, at the bottom of this dashboard, I have a list of each of those exception types, and I can see the transaction or transactions in which they occurred. In this case, all 25 of my java.lang.runtime exceptions happened in the purchase transaction, and I can see the error message associated with those. And my single illegal argument exception happened during login, and interestingly, the error message says it's an illegal character for username equals Mary space Ann. So it looks like maybe we're not sanitizing user input. Somebody used an illegal character that caused an error during login. There's also a tab here that says error frequency by error class. So if I want to see how frequently each of these exceptions has occurred, irrespective of the transaction, we show you these heat maps. The darker color means more of those errors occurred during that point in time, and the lighter color indicates fewer of them occurred. And then I can drill down into an individual exception type to see a stack trace and the attributes associated with that runtime error. So if I click java.lang.runtime exception, it will load an individual instance of that error. This one happened at 8:59 a.m. in my purchase transaction. Here's a stack trace showing the showing the code that executed leading up to that runtime error. And on the right-hand side, we can see the attributes associated with that error. Now, New Relic automatically captures a set of standard attributes like the name of the host on which that error occurred, the Java virtual machine instance, the timestamp, and the URL that called the transaction. We also have the HTTP response code and a set of request headers. Those are all captured automatically. The programmers of this application have added some custom attributes, such as the item ID that the user was trying to purchase. Maybe this error only occurs for certain items, so knowing which item the user was trying to buy could be significant. We're also way down at the bottom capturing the username. We don't capture that by default in New Relic, but with one line of code on your server, you can say, please record the username who's trying to make this purchase. And as we'll see in a moment, we can create a view that shows us which users have been impacted by runtime errors, so that if perhaps they're any of our best customers, we may want to reach out to them and try to help them troubleshoot. So that's the detail that's shown for an individual error trace. There's also a tab here showing tickets in our ticketing system. We allow you to integrate New Relic APM with a variety of error ticketing systems. Here we've added Jira version 5 integration, and so there are 4 tickets currently in our Jira system that are associated with this java.lang.runtime exception error. And I could quickly click over and view those tickets or update the information about them. So that's our default view, grouped by error class name. But the real power of our error analytics is if we go back to the groupings list and we can group this middle chart by any attribute that is of special interest to us. So maybe I want to know if these errors occur only on certain hosts. I could group by host name, and now it shows me on which hosts these exceptions have occurred. It doesn't look like they're limited to any specific host. I had 9 of them on this one and 7 on that one, etc. Again, the colors correspond to the colors on this chart. And if I wanted to filter to just a specific host and say, well, just show me the 9 errors that occurred on this host, I could click this bar. It adds a filter to the top on host ID. And now I'm looking at just the errors that have occurred on that host. The other feature that's interesting is that the data for these charts is coming from NRDB, the data store used by New Relic Insights. Each one of these unhandled exceptions generates a transaction error event in Insights. So if I wanted to open this chart over in Insights and perform additional analysis, I could click the View in Insights link, and it will open the underlying query that generates that chart in Insights, and then I can adjust this as I wish. So it currently says, show me the transaction error events grouped by host for this particular app ID, and I had a filter by host name, but what if I remove the host name filter and rerun the query? Now it's going to show me all 4 of my hosts. And maybe instead of faceting by host, I want to facet by username. And say, well, here are the users that experienced runtime errors during this hour. So by sending you over to Insights, you now have the complete analytic power of Insights to slice and dice the data and put these charts on dashboards so that they're updated in real time. Let me go back to my groupings list and remove my filter and say, well, what if I want to see errors by username? This is a custom attribute that we're sending in our code. I can select that. And again, it'll show me a breakdown of errors by user. Looks like each of my users experienced 1 runtime error during this hour. So I might want to know if Sheila, for example, is one of my best customers. I might reach out to her and say, hey, we noticed you had a problem. Can we help? I'll do one more. Maybe user agent. Are these errors limited to only specific web browsers? So I can filter by user agent, or I should say group by. And now we have a list of the user agent strings. The top 5 of them appear on this chart. And again, they look pretty widely distributed. So this error is not specific to a particular browser. But if it were, this analytic capability would help me to quickly zero in and say, oh, it looks like this looks like Safari on Windows. Looks like it had 2 instances of our runtime error. So error analytics allows you to slice and dice your errors, not just see rudimentary information like what types of errors and which transactions they've occurred in, but by using the attributes that New Relic collects automatically, as well as custom attributes that you can add in your code, you can analyze errors to quickly troubleshoot them and figure out additional action you may want to take.